Right, let's let them in.
Fabulous. Let's let people in. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, look at all these lovely people. Please come in, put your cameras on. I like to see your faces.
Yeah.
Hello, if you can put your cameras on and put your microphones on mute, that would be marvellous. Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Faces I recognise. Hi. Marvellous. So those of you that are just joining now, if you can put your cameras on and hello, and put your microphones on mute, that would be absolutely wonderful. We don't get to hear dogs and conversations in the background. That's marvellous. Oh, look, we're going over 2 screens. Exciting. Okay, those of you that are just joining, if you can please put your cameras on so I can see your lovely faces, and put your microphones on mute. Fantastic. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. Hi. Hi. Waves on. Hello. Okay, if those of you that have just joined, if you have your cameras on and put your microphones on mute, that would be amazing. Thank you very much. It was lovely to see all your faces. Look at this. Brilliant. Okay, right. This is fabulous. Okay, I think we'll just give it 1 more minute just for people to join.
Yeah, I think we're ready to go, Laura.
Is that everybody in, Shania? Thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so everybody, you're all here today for a lunch and learn. So hopefully you've grabbed your lunches. And if you haven't, don't worry. So we're going to be learning today how to create great conversations with people living with dementia. So we've been doing this at Memory Matters for quite some time, and there are some things that really help, and this is what we'll be going through today. So if we bore you, that's fair enough. Hopefully we won't. Hopefully we won't bore you, and you'll be very interested all the way to the end. But I am going to put a little hook in that towards the end we are going to put in our Facebook group, which you are all really welcome to join. And in our Facebook group, we share all sorts of marvelousness, including things like this: how to have great conversations, session plans, ideas, the sorts of things that are great for news stories to talk about with people living with dementia as well. So towards the end, Shania will pop that in the chat box, and we'll encourage you all to please join our really lovely, wonderful community. I know that some of you that are in here are already in our community. I can just see Lauren's face. Oh, she's disappeared again. Everyone's jumping about. So yeah, so please do. Oh, there you are, Lauren, you're at the bottom. Yeah, so we've got some great people in that group who are also, really skilled and are doing cognitive stimulation therapy on a weekly basis. And it's great to come in there and learn what other people are doing and learn from them. So just to let you know who I am, those of you that don't know, my name's Laura. I'm co-founder at Memory Matters Southwest, and Memory Matters has been going for 10 years. And we are really committed to helping people living with dementia to thrive in their communities. And we do this by providing groups for people. So we have groups running every day of the week at Memory Matters. And there's some of the Memory Matters team on here. I think Shania's put Memory Matters in brackets for those that are on our team. So we've got Sophie here and Dan and Shania. Give you a little wave. And yeah, and so that's kind of how we kind of know how to have these conversations and how to create conversations that are cognitively stimulating. Now, some of you will be running cognitive stimulation therapy, and some of you may not even know about cognitive stimulation therapy, and that's completely fine. What is great is that you can use the principles of CST in your conversations to create these conversations that help people to kind of use so much more of their brain. So I think it's really easy to think that dementia robs people of the ability to converse. And we might think this because when we have conversations with people living with dementia, they can sometimes repeat themselves and tell you the same thing again. They may not remember what you said to them, and therefore the conversation seems repetitive, or it feels like you need to repeat yourself. They often can't follow conversation, particularly that relies on memory. And so the conversations that we ordinarily have in our ordinary everyday life usually rely on memory. So for example, if I say to you, what did you do this weekend? Straight away, somebody with dementia is on the wrong foot in that conversation, because they won't be able to necessarily remember what they did at the weekend. And this is just a normal conversation. This is how we've learned over the years in our socialization to have conversations. So, and the other evidence is that sometimes people living with dementia may shut down in conversation because they feel they're unable to take part in it, and also may become agitated or upset or angry. So, I'm really apologize for my dogs who are just about to get agitated and angry behind me. So what we need to do is focus on what's retained when it comes to dementia. So what is retained and how can we use that in conversation? So things like intuition, right? So we know that, and I know that Philippa's here somewhere. Philippa, give us a wave. There she is. So Philippa, oh no, Philippa's hidden. Philippa, oh, the dog's name, by the way, I've got 3. So I've got Olive, who's a mummy dog, and I've got a puppy called Milo, who's only 4 weeks old. He's not staying, and I've got Rosie. So 3 dogs, but thank you. So we focus on what's being retained. And the reason that I mentioned you, Philippa, was the fact, thank you for waving. I thought you were disappearing. Because Philippa teaches with us as well. So she's one of our trainers, and in one of her training sessions, she talks about Alzheimer's in particular, and how the left-hand side of the brain tends to be affected far more than the right side of the brain in dementia. So Philippa, hopefully you're nodding at me that I've got that the right way round. And the left-hand side of the brain, of course, is much more to do with logic, and the right-hand side of the brain is much more to do with the sort of the creative side of the brain. So, and that's where the intuition is, thinking about how we speak intuitively or answer questions intuitively rather than thinking about them logically. So when we're having a conversation, if we can base it on intuition rather than that logical side, then we're going to have much more of a better conversation. So there's intuition, and I'll give you some examples in a minute of conversations, but I just want to run through the things that are retained. Imagination is another thing that's retained. So if we have a conversation which is based on imagination rather than the recalling of facts, it's going to be much more successful. So imagination questions might be something like, I wonder what would happen if. So we're just creating a scenario, and then we're both thinking about it together rather than asking them to recall something. And then the other thing, and this is another thing that Philippa is really good at, is the rhyme and rhythm, which is also retained on the right side of the brain. So rhyme and rhythm is really, really successful. So any of you that have done finishing phrases with people living with dementia, you'll know how quick they are at finding the rest of the phrase. So a bird in the hand is worth. Somebody with dementia will be very quick at that, because that's that side of the brain. It's not in the language part of the brain, which is the left. Easy way to remember that is language, logic, left, rhythm, rhyme, right. Is that right, Philippa? There's something, I think there's another, yes, she's putting a thumb up. So, and then the other thing is social chit chat. So being able to have that conversation, which actually is very much on a superficial level, and we learn it over time. So things like, you know, how are you today? I'm good, thank you. How are you? You know, how are the family? The family are great, thank you. That person isn't actually thinking about the family. They're just doing the to and forth of that conversation. And it's where sometimes people with dementia can present incredibly well. So when they have an assessment or they go and see the doctor, they present amazingly well, because that's what they're having, is this chit chat, back and forth conversation without any sort of deeper level recalling of facts. So that chit chat is a really important one. And then do you know what I always say is, if you can, and if you're happy to, is to be able to burst into song at any moment is absolutely brilliant with people living with dementia. We've been doing this over the years. We use song in our groups as well. But actually, if you're having a conversation and there are song words that are similar, why not use them? Because again, they use that that right hand side of the brain. So if I said to you, if I sang this, I want to see what happens when I do this. Okay, sha la 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 la. Yeah. Didn't know how well that would work on Zoom. But yeah, so that's what's happening. You give this feed, and then what comes back is that, you know, the brain's kind of bursts into what happens next, which is why those finishing phrases work so well. So, okay. So then the next thing that can often get in the way when we're having conversations with people living with dementia is the feeling of discomfort, our own discomfort, feeling uncomfortable with how do you even start a conversation, or how do you have a conversation? So, and it might be that you've tried having conversations, but they don't go anywhere. It might be that you've started with a social chit chat and then the conversation kind of fizzles off because you're not quite sure what else you can say or how to say it. So conversations can seem to end in this sort of embarrassing silence. And sometimes that can happen within groups as well, which, you know, it's difficult to kind of move that on. And it might seem that the person just isn't interested. But actually, it's probably to do with the fact that we're getting in our own way. So it's easy to think that that conversations with people with dementia are near on impossible, but it just isn't true. But what we have to do is completely forget about ourselves. So you have to push all that to the side and get out of our own way, if you like, and turn up as you. There is nothing better than having a conversation with somebody who's genuinely being themselves. And the thing is with dementia is that the one part of the brain that that doesn't shrink, like the rest of the brain will shrink during dementia, is the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that's to do with our emotions. And it does a lot of other things too, but, you know, fight or flight, all of that stuff comes from the amygdala. And so it means that people with dementia are very, very tuned in to how you're feeling. So if you're feeling a little bit embarrassed, or you're feeling a little bit anxious or unsure about how to have this conversation, then the person that's in front of you will be taking that on and will be feeding that back to you. So you end up in this kind of this cycle of, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And then the person picks up on that, and then it becomes like this anxious mess. And that is essentially why it's so important to be able to step outside of ourselves, put ourselves away somewhere, and just crack on and think about, it's not about me, it's about them. How can I make this person in front of me feel more confident than possible? So, and the best way to do that is to be curious. Ask questions, but be mindful that they're not factual questions. So what do you think of this? Have you seen this picture? I love it. What does it make you think of? What do you think the person in this picture is thinking about? So these questions don't rely on memory at all, but it's curiosity. So focus only on the person. That's all we need to do, is focus on the person and step into where they are, meet them where they are, and use your intuition. So we all have this amazing intuition, but because of our logical part of our brain takes over all the time. So there's something about really grounding yourself before you go into a conversation and just letting some of that logical stuff go and just be in the moment with that person. So the other thing to do is to let go of controlling the conversation. It's very easy sometimes to try and take control of the conversation, to move that person where you're hoping to get them to. If you've got an end goal with a conversation with somebody with dementia, then you're likely to be kind of taking somebody down a narrow path, when actually some amazing conversations can come out where you're not expecting them to at all. So you might feed them a question like, what's this person in this picture thinking? And from that may come a memory, or may come something else that you weren't expecting. And you suddenly find yourself talking about something completely different. And that's completely fine, to help people to engage and be curious themselves. So be prepared to be taken on a journey. And then the other thing to do sometimes when somebody with dementia, now we focus on people with mild to moderate dementia. So that's where we specialise at Memory Matters, or where we've chosen to specialise at Memory Matters, is through mild to moderate dementia and providing cognitive stimulation for them. But I'm also aware that we may sometimes have conversations with people who are more moderate or severe dementia. And at moderate and severe, then somebody's language may well be affected, and their ability to have a conversation that is recognizable, I guess, as a conversation that you and I might have. It may have words in there that might not fit. It may have phrases in there that are repeated. And it's very easy to think that you can't have a conversation because it's not logically making sense for you. But actually, I've had some of the best conversations with people who I'm not taking the conversation anywhere. I'm just meeting them where they are. There was a lady that I once nursed, and she used to say, Mary in the dairy, and the dairy and the Mary. Mary in the dairy, and the dairy and the Mary. And I would sit with her and we'd repeat it back. And it was all about tone of voice. Mary in the dairy, and the dairy and the Mary. Mary in the dairy. Mary in the dairy, and the Mary in the dairy. Mary's in the dairy. So just by having this, oh, do you know what's happening is my battery's running out and I'm going to have to run and get how embarrassing. 1 minute. Thank God it's just here. Sorry. I can see my team shaking their heads at me. Oh, Laura. Oh, Laura. I'm so sorry, everyone. That was really unprofessional. But I think I have saved the day. Let's make sure it's plugged in. Brilliant. Okay. Right, at this juncture, it would be nice. Do you want to ask any questions? Does anyone have any questions from what I've said so far? You can type them in the chat or you can put your hand up. If you want to put your digital hand up, if you hover over participants, I believe. Is that right, Shania? You can put your hand up.
I actually don't know.
I thought so.
It's under reactions.
Oh yeah, in reactions, sorry.
Jane Pauling, do you have a question?
Hi Laura, no I don't have a question, I was just going to show you where the reactions were.
You're a superstar.
Thank you.
I love it. Together we can make it through.
We can.
There's a question in the chat, Laura.
Okay, yeah, so from Anna who says, when someone can't recall a word and gets frustrated, what is the best to help? Okay, so yeah, so this will happen a lot with somebody who may have aphasia, and we work a lot with people. In fact, over lockdown, since we've gone online, I was hearing this morning, that some people who have aphasia actually find the virtual sessions easier for that reason. And I think the most important thing is to give them time. Sometimes I will ask, would you like me to help? Because actually sometimes it can be frustrating if somebody takes over. And if you fill in someone's conversation and that's not really what they're wanting to say at all, that can be really off-putting. So it's good to ask, and it's good to ask that question is, you know, if it happens a lot, say, when you can't find a word, would you like me to help? Or would you just like it if I just stayed quiet? Very often just staying quiet works. I think we tend to try and fill every space because we feel uncomfortable with it. And we don't need to, and it's okay to sit quietly sometimes, but it is down to that level of frustration. If you can see that someone's getting really frustrated about it and you know what the word is, then you might want, or you know what the word might be, then you might want to feed it in. So so that sometimes works. But again, you know, when you're working with people with dementia, and I say this all the time, everybody's different, just like every single one of you, and all of these boxes are different, and it just really depends. So I think in answer to that, it's just be really open and always be willing to say sorry if you get it wrong. So if you do give somebody the wrong word and they get frustrated with you, then be prepared to say, you know, I'm really sorry I did that. That's important. And learn from it, and then maybe next time don't do it. But don't be afraid to try and make mistakes, because if we don't make mistakes, then we don't learn. Okay, so I'm just going to recap where I was. I'll just find out where I was. Okay, so let's talk about the next one, which is the belief that it's hard to have conversations with people with dementia, because this is how a conversation can go, right? So, did you have a good weekend? Great, thank you. I had a great weekend. So up until this point, we've exchanged pleasantries and it seems to be going really well. And then you ask something like, lovely, what did you do? And then at this stage, something happens because that person's got to remember what they did. So they've got a choice here. They can either lie and make something up. So they can say, oh, I went to my daughter's house and I had a roast dinner. Or on the other hand, they could admit to the fact that they can't remember. And for some people, that will be fine. Some people will be absolutely fine in life to be able to say, do you know what? I can't remember what I did this weekend. They may even make a joke of it. You know, isn't that funny? I can't even remember what I did. But for someone else who can't remember, that potentially could flag something emotional for them because they can't remember, or they may find it really upsetting. So you can see how just feeding somebody a question that is memory-based sets them having to make a choice, to lie or to admit. But they definitely can't answer your question. So we try, where possible, to avoid these questions. Now, I say this, and every single one of us on our team, including myself, will find that sometimes we ask these questions because we are it's part of how we've been socialized to have those questions. If you go to a networking meeting, or if you meet somebody in the supermarket and you strike up a conversation, generally you will have a conversation that requires memory. And it's quite good to notice that. So as you go about your week, just notice how many times you start a conversation or have a conversation which actually is not inclusive for somebody living with dementia. Or for them to be included, they either have to lie or they have to admit that they can't remember. So it's quite a good exercise to do. So let go of factual questions. And this really is the biggest learning from today, is about letting go of factual questions. So it may be easy to think that conversations are just hard when it comes to dementia, but actually with a little change in our approach, we can create magic in our conversations. And we're going to sort of have a little go and a little investigate with this in a minute. So be interesting. See if you can be interesting, or think about interesting things or interesting concepts. You know, I liken it to asking a factual question for somebody with dementia may be a bit like asking somebody who can't see to describe the picture in front of them. You know, it's just not going to work. So think about the sorts of questions that you can ask that think about emotion, intuition, and imagination. So I often will give a fact. So in the cognitive stimulation therapy groups, we use a news story. News stories are brilliant because actually you're going to give them some facts and then you're going to ask them what they think about it. They don't really need to retain that. You're not testing them. You're not going to give them the facts and then test them 30 minutes later. It's in the moment. So as an example, I read an article in my daughter's, she gets a weekly newspaper, which is brilliant. And it has these fantastic pictures. And it had a picture of them airlifting 3 horses from a helicopter in a sling. So 3 horses up in the air. So a picture like that's brilliant because it already you're creating interest. And then so in that example, I would give the group or the person I was doing a one-to-one just a little bit of a highlight about what's going on in the picture. So here there's 3 horses being airlifted from the bottom of a helicopter. What do you think about that? Or what do you think the horses are thinking? Or what, you know, why do you think that they might do that like that? So can you see in my questioning that I'm not being really specific? I'm wondering, I wonder what, or what do you think? Or yeah, so when we say what do you think, we can make anything up, because that's what we're meant to be doing, isn't it? Is making stuff up. If somebody says, what do you think? How many of us make stuff up on the hoof and then afterwards go, oh, that wasn't quite what I meant. And there's another one that scientists have created the whitest of paints. Okay, this is another news story. So they've created the whitest of paints, and they're thinking that if they paint all the roofs in this white paint that reflects the sun, that actually it's going to save our energy bills because loads of countries won't need to use air conditioning or won't need to use so much air conditioning. So there's sorts of questions that you could come from that would be, you know, would you be happy to have a white roof? Who would paint it? So we have to bring in like this humor as well constantly, because actually humor is really important when it comes to conversations. We do a lot of laughing at Memory Matters, and probably do more laughing than anything else. And actually it's in the laughter, it's in the laughter that that this stuff really happens. When somebody isn't noticing that they're having a cognitively stimulating conversation is when it's best, because we have to be relaxed, and our memories actually don't work very well when we're not relaxed. And I think the key thing to say about cognitively stimulating conversation is, one of the things that I get asked a lot is, you know, are we trying to get them to remember? And it comes back to the not asking a blind person to describe a picture in front of them. It's the same thing, isn't it? Why would we ask somebody to remember? So reminiscence is absolutely brilliant. And we have lots of reminiscence conversations, but not necessarily asking people to remember specific things. It's better to prompt them to use props and things that we can touch and smell and hear to evoke those memories. And of course, it's wonderful when the wires meet, if you like, and this amazing memory comes to the fore and somebody shares it with you. But actually, that's not the main reason for the conversation. The main reason for the conversation is to help somebody to engage and to be able to converse and be a part of it. So rather than do you remember X, we will instead give some information, just like I did with the news story. So it might be a photograph, it might be a smell. Smells can invoke amazing memories. But actually the conversation isn't, what is this? What does it smell like? Is a good question, actually. What does it smell like? Because that's, we can use imagination for that, but not really specific questions around it. Does that all make sense, everybody? Thumbs up if we're good. Good, I like this. I spend a lot of time going, oh, can you see? And then Shania will have recorded this, and then I've got this video of just my forehead where I'm doing this, looking to see if everybody's listening. So do feel free to bung questions in the chat. We really like questions here at Memory Matters. So if you have some, just bung them in the chat, and as we go along, we'll answer them. So let's have a look at things like using pictures and props. We know that the brain works better when we use as many of the senses as possible. So we always try, obviously pre-COVID, it's been quite difficult because we've gone online since then. But when we get back, hopefully we'll be using pictures and props, things we can smell, things we can touch, taste, all of those things. So basically we're trying to make the brain work as best as it possibly can and stimulate it and stimulate thinking. And ask questions like, so if we're using a prop, we could ask something like, what do you think you might do with this? Especially if you've got unusual things. What do you think you might do with this? Or how does this picture make you feel? Right, art ones are great. Sophie's a really good one at doing art sessions where the group actually look at some really good art or really terrible art. It doesn't really matter. It's just art, and they can decide whether they like it or they don't like it, or what they think about it, or where they would hang it if they had it in their house. Would it be in the downstairs loo, or would it be pride of place in the sitting room? So those are all questions that require imagination. I wonder is probably one of your best starters when it comes to conversations. I wonder what. I wonder who. I wonder what this makes you think of. I wonder what you would have worn back then. Or because that's a good one, because it's not asking what did you wear. It's saying, I wonder. It just brings it up gently into conversation.
Laura, we have a question in the chat.
Fabulous, thank you. So
from Sandra.
How can you stop others correcting people's stories and oh, I know, this is so hard. Okay, so this is such a good one. So in our sessions, we just work with the people living with dementia, and we have a rule that people, carers, loved ones, etc., don't come into the groups for this very reason. And I had a really difficult time once at a memory cafe where I did a whole session on orientation, and we had a map, and we got all of the people who had dementia who were downstairs with me while their carers were upstairs. And we created this amazing map of all the different places that were important to them. So again, think about that as we ask the question, not where were you born, or where did you go on holiday, because they're all factual questions, but rather where on the map are you particularly attracted to, or where on the map is important or significant to you? And then we would plot on the map all these different people, and had some amazing stories. And we spent a whole hour sharing stories and having some great conversations. And then at the end of it, the carers came downstairs, and I realised within, I don't know, about a minute of very proudly showing my map to the carers and saying, look what we did, isn't it great? Expecting them to say, oh, it's wonderful. But instead, the corrections came, and more corrections came, and more corrections came. He wasn't posted there in the army. He didn't do that. That's not true. And unfortunately, it happens. But the reason it happens is it comes from a really good place. And it's when you really love somebody and you've known them all your life and lived with them, perhaps if it's a parent or a loved one, and then they develop dementia, there's something inside you that wants them to still be who they always were, to still be able to answer those questions and be able to be the life and soul of the party in the way that they always were. And it's quite difficult to adjust to that person being different. And so for them, for loved ones, it will always be them that will correct people's stories and recollections, because they're trying to pull them back to where they want them to be, where they remember them being. So that's where it's really, really difficult. And I think what we have to do, it's quite easy to get angry and upset when we're doing all this lovely work and then somebody comes in and makes a correction. But actually, what's really important is we understand where they're coming from and why it's hard for them. So just gentle reminders that actually, particularly, we would say in our groups, it doesn't matter, facts don't matter. So one of Memory Matters principles is that facts don't matter, and we go on feelings and opinions rather than facts. And so it's important when people are bringing people to the group that they understand that too. But it doesn't always work. But it's good to have those conversations. So I really get it, Sandra. That question is such a good one, because it happens, and it happens more when you're in a mixed environment. So, for example, memory cafes where people are often sat with their loved one. And the best thing that you can do is make sure that the activity is imagination based, so that everyone's using their imagination, and then you're not providing an activity which could lead into very factual questions. The other thing that sometimes happens is that the loved one will kind of step in and ask the question again. if you've ever slipped up, and we all do, slipped up into a factual question, and you realize what you've done, that of course that's not going to get an answer, and you just go to change it, but then they jump in with, come on, you know this, You know the answer to this. Another question is, do you have sessions like this for carers and families? So what we're doing is we're starting to run these workshops, and this is one of them that you've kindly come along to. And if that's a suggestion from you, then we will take that on board, and certainly we can do a session for carers and loved ones if that would be useful. Yeah, it's a good suggestion. We do something called Exploring Dementia, which anyone can come to. So it's that is a session for organisations, for volunteers and for loved ones to better understand how to support somebody living with dementia. But obviously these workshops are open to anybody, so anybody can come along to these. There's another question there. Often people with dementia have memories of being young and having children. They then get distressed because of... Oh, I've lost it. Shania, could you read that one out to me, please?
Yeah. Often people with dementia have memories of being young and having children. Then they get distressed because in their mind they should be with the child, or another sad memory. Do you tell them the truth or go along with it?
Yeah, again, so this is really, really good question. And I'm going to answer again really boringly with it depends. So where there are, so it's very, very common. And I think from working in care homes, this is something that I saw many, many times, of the person kind of rattling at the door at school pickup time, often called sundowning. So that sort of late afternoon time where people get anxious and are wanting to go and pick up children or go and do something, and they are in a different time zone to us. So we have to think about how we approach that person. I will always say, meet them where they are. So if they believe that they have a child to pick up, then we need to be thinking about how we can use therapeutic lies, they're called, but we would only use them when we know absolutely everything about that person. So for example, if any mother who has a child at school or has had a child at school will know that if there's nobody there at the school gates to pick them up and it's meant to be you, then that's really quite distressing for you. For that person with dementia, that's where they will be in their mind. So the only way to think about it is that they are actually at their edge and they have got somebody to pick up from school. How would you respond? So for me, if somebody said, oh, it's fine, just come and have a cup of tea, I wouldn't be sitting down and having that cup of tea, because I would be wanting to get out that door to get to my child. So, but if somebody said, it's okay because Ian's picking them up today, Ian's my stepdad, right? So that's quite normal. So if you had my history and you were able to say, oh, it's okay, Ian's picking them up today, come and have a cup of tea, then that would be fine. I'd be fine with that. So there's a whole debate around therapeutic lies, and I'm not sure we have time to have that debate today, but I'm absolutely up for conversations if you want to send me an email. Shania will put my email address in a little bit later, so you'll have that. Did I answer that question, or did I go off on a tangent? Oh, another sad memory. So yeah, and then I can give another example. So there is an artist who runs a project called the Trebus Project, and if you haven't heard of it, which you may well not have, he went into care homes and he took verbatim what people with dementia were telling him, and he wrote them all down verbatim, and then they got turned into like a radio play with famous people who took it on and read verbatim what the person with dementia was saying. And it was so interesting because when you looked at the words, they seemed like they weren't making sense, but when an actor took that on and read the words in an expressive way, it was really easy to follow what they were saying. Now, the guy who did the Trebus Project was in a care home for over a year, and he was going back in every day to record these conversations. And one day he noticed that, well, he noticed all the time actually, that there was this lady at the door every time he went who was wanting to leave to go and find her husband. She was distressed and she was asking, where's my husband? Where's my husband? And the staff team had all sort of decided that they were going to, because it was too distressing to tell her that her husband had died, they would say other things like he's gone to the shops or he's gone out, and she just wasn't believing it. And it was it just wasn't working. And he went in one day without actually talking to the staff team, and he just decided that he was going to tell her the truth. And he said, "I'm really sorry to have to tell you, but your husband's died." And actually, she was obviously very sad, but she said, "Thank you so much for being honest with me, because nobody's being honest with me." And after that, the next time he went into the care home, on the whiteboard, it said, "Tell Mrs. Mill her husband's still dead," which ended up to being the title of his book, "Tell Mrs. Mill her husband's still dead." So that's one to look up. So in answer to that question, it was a very long answer to that question, is again, it really depends on the person and on their history, and it also, you have to be willing to make mistakes. So that could have gone very wrong for that gentleman doing that, and he would have needed to have learned and done it another way. But had he not done it, she would have been distressed anyway. So be prepared to make mistakes. Any other questions? So there's one from Nicole. "I tend to reflect back and use the opportunity to ask them to tell me about their children, for example." Again, curiosity. Yeah, lovely. So yeah, that's a really nice way of doing it, is reflecting back and then asking, like, tell me about this. So again, you're not asking a specific question, you're just asking them to tell me about that. So for example, if they're going to look for their children, tell me about that. Or if they're looking for their car keys because they need to go somewhere, then you could ask, where were you hoping to go? Or where are you hoping to go? So you can move those conversations on to be curious. And another suggestion there, are you missing your children? Yeah, so really looking at what's the need behind that question? What's the need behind it, and how do we address that need? No worries, Sandra, we'll be recording it. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so let me get back to where I was. So imagination. Oh, before we get to imagination, so here's the thing, right? So when we connect as human beings connecting with dementia, we need to get over all that being shy and getting to know each other thing, and just jump in as a best friend, right? The best friend approach works really, really well. So we could ask advice. Why not ask people with dementia who've had all this life experience some advice? I often ask those questions. What do you think I should do with my hair? What do you think of this picture? Do you think it would suit me? Or, I'm just painting my living room at the moment and I'm just choosing some colours. What colour would you choose out of these if you were painting your living room? So actually helping people to feel useful. They have, people have opinions and things that we can use, and that some amazing talents and skills like flower arranging, or whatever it is that they're able to do, and to use their muscle memory rather than that logical memory. So things like flower arranging are a really good one. Anything really like that's that people can just do without thinking about it. It's called sort of mindless behavior. We tend to think of mindlessness as being something negative, but actually mindlessness is awesome. Anyone who's ever painted or drawn, that's mindlessness. You're shutting off that left side of your brain and just using your right, and that's something to be really celebrated. So using that part of the brain and creating conversations around it. So how would you arrange these flowers? I haven't got a clue. Learn, it's brilliant to learn from them. I think we always say that the best things that I've learned have been in cognitive stimulation therapy sessions, things that I've never even heard of or thought about, or new words, or new sorts of things. Then imagination sorts of questions would be those I wonder questions. I wonder what the Queen eats for tea when she's been out all day, not just like when she has like a property, but I wonder, like, do you think she has a tin of soup? It's all imagination questions, but they're really good questions to have. What would you take on a desert island? You were going to spend 6 months on a desert island. What 3 things would you take? I wonder what someone who won £1 million would buy first. What would you buy first? And then would you rather questions, like really silly questions, like tell them you're going to be silly. We're going to have some really silly questions now. Okay. So would you rather have feathers or scales? It's an important question, that one. It split my family, that one. I thought I'd have feathers, but my husband's allergic. Another one, would you go for an icy swim? If you had to choose one or the other, would you have an icy swim or would you have a bath in warm beans? Just a thought. Okay, I'm gonna open the floor again to questions. So if you've got any more questions, I'm glad I've got some smiles going on. People are thinking she's a bitch. Okay, any more questions for me or for my team? You can unmute yourself and ask if it's easier.
I've got a question.
Hello, Charlotte.
Hi. When you look for news stories, how do you find appropriate ones? Because I was actually looking for something this morning and it's just dire. You know, obviously you don't want things that are going to upset people. You want something that's a bit light-hearted, that you can get some sort of mileage out of. But the news stories at the moment are, I mean, your one about the horse, that was brilliant. You know, if I could find something like that, would be great. But it's just really hard to find something that is not either COVID-based or just not very nice.
Yeah. So the reason that I had that news story is my daughter, and I haven't got it with me now, but my daughter gets, I'll put it, what we'll do, we'll give you the Facebook link, and then in Facebook we'll put a link into these different resources. So Shania, if you make me remember what that newspaper is. But yeah, my daughter has this weekly newspaper and it's absolutely brilliant. She's 8, right? And it's my favorite newspaper that I've ever read, because it explains things to me. But it's brilliant, and it's actually not childish at all, but it has all those sorts of news stories. So that's where I got, you know, the white paint newspaper story and the horses one. So it does collect, it does have the sort of hard news, but not so much of it. And there's a lot more good news of things that's been going on as well. So I would really recommend it. And I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called, but we'll get that to you. So I can really recommend that. And if you've got kids, get it, and then it's an excuse then, so you can have it after the children and use it. Is anyone else on the team, like Sophie, or I think I've only got Sophie actually, who's facilitator, but any other things around news stories?
I was just going to say, when I've been doing some co-facilitating, obviously I've been looking for news stories, and a couple of things is literally just simply Googling fun news stories or good news stories. Also on the even things like on the BBC News website, obviously you've got the sections along the top. There's usually quite interesting ones under like science, technology, different things like that. Yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, there's BBC Good News, isn't there? But they don't tend to update it that quickly. But sometimes there's some good ones on there. Yeah, and different topics. But yeah, it can be tricky sometimes when you feel we're just surrounded by doom and gloom and COVID. But yeah.
Great, thank you. I can see some more questions.
You got a question from Anna in the chat. Can you recall a memory and see if it evokes memories?
Yes, absolutely. So I think reminiscence is really important, and I think like a shared memory. So I think one of the ones that we hark back to is the England winning the World Cup. So things like that. I mean, we've got old newspaper stories, old newspapers actually, that we use as well. So you can do it that way. So it's like a general shared memory that you can share and then see what comes of that. Or it might be, you know, we do quite a bit of reminiscence, but it's really important when we're reminiscing from a cognitive stimulation point of view that we are comparing to the here and now. So we don't just do, oh, this is what happened, because then the person is just going over the same stories again and again. It's not actually stimulating. But if we ask questions around it, then we can create new connections. Or that's the idea, is that you create new connections in thinking. So so it might be, you know, I wonder questions. I wonder what, you know, I wonder what you would have had in your kitchen when you were a child, because, you know, some people had Argos, etc. So and just feeding the I wonder allows people to connect with it without it absolutely having to be fact.
Jane's got her hand up. I think she wants to ask a question.
Yeah, hi Laura. I just wanted to ask, I've been approached by a member of staff, and her mum has a very vivid memory of a house, so she can describe the house, what it looks like, how you get there, but she can't remember where it is, and none of the family are able to. So they were asking me, is it best to sort of just to try and distract her with something else, or, you know, they've looked at photos and they can't find anything that looks like the house?
I would be thinking about it like imagination. So maybe, you know, would she be able to try and draw it, or could she help you draw it? What did it look like? Just be curious about it. So, you know, it might be that it's not a memory, that it might be just pure imagination, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But the fact that she wants to talk about it, then I would, you know, really bring that in and say, right, let's talk about it then, as long as it's not distressing. I think that's the difference, isn't it? If someone's really distressed about it, then maybe then distraction is better.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Is that okay?
Fine, thank you.
We got another question from Helen. Why do young children work so well with people with, I think that's meant to be dementia?
Yeah, I think it's down to, I mean, I'm guessing here, but I think it's down to children being able to be in the moment. And that's what people with dementia are, is completely in the moment. So when you watch a child play, or when you spend any time with a child, they are right there then with what's in front of them. And that is the ideal. And I think that that's why it works so well, because there is no, that logical conversation. You know, a child asking somebody with dementia whether they'd rather have feathers or scales, that's a pretty normal conversation, isn't it, for a child? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I just think they don't do that whole, they get out of their own way. They're certainly not nervous about having conversations, or they might be to start with, but when they get to know people, they're not. And yeah, I think it's just being in the moment. I think we have so much to learn from people with dementia. We, you know, as a culture, we tend to think, oh, people with dementia, you know, we won't include them in things, so they won't be able to participate. But actually we have so much to learn, and I, you know, love being around people with dementia for that reason, because you're just spending time in that space, and that's the same as when we spend time with children in that space, I believe, anyway.
Vicky said about Good News Network is a good website, bit odd though. And Laura said the Metro newspaper online have a section with weird news.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. Thank you ever so much for that. That's helpful. So yeah, I think we've got the Good News website, and you're right, it's a bit odd. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and thanks, Lauren, for the Metro newspaper. Didn't know about that one. So this is really great. We'll take this and save the chat and add this into the Facebook group. So I think Shania, if you want to put the link for the Facebook group in the chat now, so I would really encourage you all to join it. Don't worry if you're not a CST facilitator, it's called the CST Facilitators Club. It doesn't matter. If you're working in dementia, or you're wanting to, or you're loving somebody with dementia, we would love you to come and join us in the Facebook group, and we'd love to see you there. Now, I'm going to ask you if you would be happy for me to tell you about our fellowship, our Memory Matters Fellowship. Would you be happy? Yes, I've got some thumbs up from Sophia. Thank you very much. My iPad's locked in.
Before you do that, Laura, we just got another thing in the chat. Not a question, just a recollection. How hard is it for family/carers when their loved ones' characters change?
Yes, and sorry, that wasn't a question, was it? It was a
no.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's just saying.
Yes, it is really hard. It's incredibly hard to see somebody, you know, that you've had a relationship with, you know, sometimes all your life, and that relationship has to change because of dementia. And there's, you know, it brings up all sorts of things, and grief and everything, and also because your relationship has to change. And I see it already now with my own mother, and how her cognition is really changing, and how who she is to me is changing. You know, she used to be the person who would, you know, when I'm not very good at grammar, so I would be the sort of would write something and then I would take it to her and she would take it apart and say, oh no, you need to write it like this, and she's just not able to do that anymore. And it's things like that, you know, how people's roles in your own life change, and you have to kind of change with it, and it can be, you know, it can hit hard, definitely. Okay, right, so I'm just going to tell you very quickly about the fellowship. So our fellowship is an exclusive program for people who would like to learn how to run cognitive stimulation therapy, or workshops, or day clubs, all the things that Memory Matters have ever done actually since we've been running for 10 years. And it's 6 months of immersive training, essentially, where you would come under our wing and you would meet with me every single week for an hour and a half. We would teach you everything that you need to know in terms of putting your sessions together, and you would get ready run session plans that you can just take off the shelf from us and go and run with them. But you're not alone, so we'll coach you through it. So any difficulties that you come across, not just in your groups, but we'll help you there too. So how do I respond to this, or what do I do about this, or do I need a policy for this, that and the other? We can help you with that. But also if you're wanting to run it as a business on your own, or as a CIC or whatever, then we can help you do that. We can help you with funding bids, and we can help you with marketing as well, so marketing scripts and marketing material. And we also do observations and feedback to make sure that the cognitive stimulation therapy that you're running is top notch, and we'll help you to do that. And you'll also be part of a VIP group as well. So you get all of that in our fellowship. So if you are interested, we're launching our fellowship in September. So if you're interested in that, then please email Shania, and Shania will stick her email address in there, or you've done it already. So yeah, if you email Shania, if you're interested in the fellowship, and we will book a call and have a chat with you and see what you think. So that is the end of my little pitch at the end. It's been really, really lovely to see all your faces, and thank you so much for coming along and for asking all your really wonderful questions.
Laura,
yes,
do you want to do the jam board for future workshops?
Oh my lord, yes.
I'll just pop it in the chat.
I had 4 minutes left, and I was thinking we've got 4 minutes. So yes, Jamboard. So if you follow that link that Shania has just popped in the chat, and here we would like your suggestions for future workshops. Okay, so on the left hand side of the screen you'll see a little square which is a sticky note. So it's underneath that arrow. If you click on that one, it will give you a sticky note. And then on the sticky note, you can write a suggestion of the things that you would like us to cover in our workshops. So these workshops we're going to be running every, is it 6 weeks, 4 weeks? I don't know. Should I help?
6.
Every 6 weeks, we will be doing a workshop completely free for you to come along to. And we would love to share whatever you would like us to share. So just stick your suggestions on that Jamboard. Has everybody followed the link to the Jamboard? Oh, yeah, I can see there are people in there. Brilliant. So it's a sticky note on the left-hand side. You can make them different colours if you want to, and just stick your suggestions in, and we will take that back and we'll create a workshop for you. Thank you for your lovely comments. I'm just reading them. Fantastic. So all that's left for me to say then is to make sure that you follow the link to the Facebook group. So it's called the CST Facilitators Club, I believe, on Facebook. And there's a few questions for you to answer, and then we will let you in and have a little party as we welcome you into the Facebook group. It's a lovely community. And every Tuesday, at 3:30 we have a coffee and chat for anybody. So if you're in the Facebook group, you can follow the link and come into our Zoom, and you will see, generally I will be there, as Sophie as well. So it's me and Sophie are sort of the regular faces that are there for you to grab a coffee and just have a chat with us. And you know, that's where we can talk about news stories that we've used that week, and share our news stories and share the topics that we've been doing as well. So yeah, absolutely, come in there. You'd be really, really welcome. It's lovely to see your faces. It's nice to see you, Lauren, as well. Lauren's a regular too to our coffee afternoon. Lauren works for Age UK and runs runs sessions in Somerset. So yeah, so the group is a really good one to get into because there are lots of us who are running groups regularly. Brilliant. I can see all your suggestions coming in.
There's a hand up, Laura. Shirley.
Oh, hand up, Shirley. Oh, can't hear you, Shirley. You're on mute.
Right. Yeah, some of my colleagues, because we're running our group, we've just done our first pilot group. We work for the NHS and it's gone very well. But some of my colleagues couldn't get on and I'm the only one. So is there, like, are you going to record this where they can watch it?
Absolutely. So with every workshop that we do, we'll record it and we put it onto our YouTube. So what will happen is after this session, Shania will email you all out probably within the next 3 days.
Yeah.
With a link to the recording.
Yeah, fabulous. I mean, I've got loads of questions I'd love to ask, but I can't keep on.
Well, jump into the Facebook group, Shirley, and you can ask.
I'm already on there.
Oh,
yeah,
brilliant. Well, ask your questions in there and we'll answer them.
Will do.
All right.
It's fabulous. I think this is wonderful.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shirley.
No problem.
Right. Well, it's lovely to see you all. And hopefully see you at the next workshop. And before that, hopefully see you in the Facebook group.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome. Bye.
Take care. Bye.